Hey everyone, welcome to Marketing for Designers podcast. I'm your host, Masha Coyne, a messaging strategist and a copywriter for the interior design industry. I've been marketing for what feels like forever in my past career at some of the biggest global firms like KPMG and Deloitte. Today, I write website copy for designers using my signature voice of customer framework. If you're a designer looking to up your marketing game and attract premium clients, this podcast is for you. Each week on the show, we're going to be talking all things marketing, from branding to messaging to social media, SEO, and so much more. So you can have all the tools you need to grow your business and attract your dream clients. Hello, and welcome back to Marketing for Designers podcast, where we talk about all things marketing to help interior designers market their businesses effectively. So today we're talking about personal brand and brand photography. I feel like personal brand can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the way I think about it is personal brand is how you are perceived and seen by others. It's your reputation and the story that you convey through your actions, communications, visuals, and your overall online presence. So for interior designers, your personal brand means showcasing your either a distinct style and aesthetic, your design philosophy, your unique approach to projects. And the reason why you want to build and showcase your personal brand is because it can help you do so many things. It can help you attract ideal clients. It can help you showcase your expertise, build trust, help you set yourself apart in the marketplace, and so much more. And there's a lot of things that go into building a personal brand. And today we're going to talk about one facet of that work that goes into creating and building a personal brand. And that is attracting your ideal clients through brand photography. So my guest today is Avalon Mohns of Avalon Mohns Photography. Avalon is a special guest because I personally worked with Avalon on my latest branding photo shoot. And let me introduce you to Avalon. So Avalon is a brand and portrait photographer specializing in brand visuals for small business owners. Since 2019, she's helped over 100 small business owners create a brand they love and get photos that move the needle in their businesses. Her unique photography process allows her clients to experience an increase in leads and social media engagement, which is so amazing. What a great impact. So welcome to the show, Avalon.
Thank you so much for having me. And I see that you started to post your brand photos and they look amazing.
I started teasing them just a little bit. I'm not ready for the whole thing yet because my website is not ready. And I know you're going through a brand kind of rebrand and the whole redoing of your website. So I'm hoping to do like a more major. I guess right now it's like a softer launch, but I started teasing it. And it's so funny. I was in my mastermind group yesterday and a couple of people noticed that. It's like, hey, what are you doing differently on your social media? I noticed like a change in your photography. I'm like, yeah, it looks so much more professional. I absolutely love that. So such a great topic to talk about it today.
Yeah, absolutely. And they all tie in together, like the ideal client and brand photography. So I'm excited to discuss how kind of the two influence each other.
Which is so interesting. So maybe that's where you start. I feel like where I actually want to start, you said something interesting in the questionnaire, in the guest intake questionnaire that I have guests fill out. You said, building a personal brand is the best marketing strategy. I was wondering if you can help us explain why, help us unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I love that you brought that up because a lot of people, like especially on Instagram and social media nowadays, a lot of people will say, oh, my market's oversaturated, right? And like, if we're honest with ourselves, every market is oversaturated these days. Like we can probably just do a quick search on Instagram and find hundreds of people that are doing the same thing as us, if not thousands, right? Even in our area, depending on where you live. So the fact that the market is saturated, we really need to figure out like what our unique selling proposition is. And a lot of people think if they build a great service, if they build a great product, like people will come. And a lot of the cases that is true, but to leverage yourself a little bit even more and give yourself even more of an edge, I think a personal brand is such an impactful way of doing that because people are looking to connect with humans more and more every day. Like it's not just enough just to have a product or a service. I feel like having like values, sharing your values that only you have, people are going to connect with that. And that's going to be the reason someone's going to hire you over someone else, is if they're connecting with you more than just, oh, I need this product or service. It's like, this is the person I want to do it with. This is the person that's going to take me from A to B and really provide that transformation. So I think that building a personal brand is so important for that reason.
I believe in that so much. I feel like it is always the instance of human to human connection, not so much like a service provider to people. It's to businesses. It's always human to human. So tell me, what's your take on what is a personal brand?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my take on a personal brand is kind of like just what you do differently, like who you are at the core of your being, of your soul, like what you do differently, what you bring to the table, kind of how you do things, differently than anybody else. So you can kind of look at other people's processes, what they're offering, and figure out, well, what's my take on that? Like, what's my philosophy on that? Or where do I differ? And then you're going to really want to reinforce those points. So for brand photography, for example, like my personal brand would be that I consider myself like the ultimate hype woman for brands. So I'm like, whatever you want to do, like we're going to make it possible. And that's my personal brand, is like just that value of like, we're going to make your dreams possible. We're going to do whatever you want to do. We're going to make it work. So kind of just those unique things and characteristics and traits that you offer that nobody else does.
I like that. And I think you do such a great job of collecting that information up front, because when I was looking for a brand photographer and I looked at a few, and first and foremost, obviously, you don't know if you're going to connect with that person until you actually have a face-to-face meeting or like a Zoom call or, an introduction of some sort. So I was judging different brand photographers on their intake process, on their intake questionnaire. And I really love that yours had so many questions about who I am as a brand, what are my goals, who is my audience that we're trying to attract. And so maybe that's a good segue into why is it important for you as a brand photographer to know who your clients, let's say it's an interior designer and they want to schedule a photo shoot, like a branding photo shoot with you. Why is it important for you to know who their ideal client is before scheduling or even planning a branding photo shoot?
Yeah, that's such an important point to make, because a lot of people think that brand photography functions in the same way as other photography. And it doesn't, because it needs to be so much more intentional if you actually want it to have results for your business, right? Because any other photography, you can kind of just like pick a pretty location, you show up with your hair and makeup done, and you get some nice photos out of it. And that's fine. But for brand photography, in order to get a return on your investment, which we want as business owners, we always want that. You have to figure out how it's going to actually become a lead generator for your business. And the way of doing that is figuring out, how can these photos appeal to my ideal client? So figuring that out is really going to dictate the things that we do in our brand photos in terms of locations, outfits, props, overall mood and aesthetic, to make sure that we're attracting the people that we want to attract and actually like bringing them into our world and then converting them into clients, or at least nurturing them to eventually become clients.
Yeah, I'm glad you're making that distinction, because I think it's tempting to, like all of us, I feel like all of us know a great photographer. Maybe they've done their family, our family portraiture, whatever that is. And it's so tempting to just say, well, yeah, for my brand, I'm just going to leverage that photographer. So I'm glad you're making that distinction, that regular photography, maybe it's a family photography or an event photography, whatever that is quite different from brand photography. A lot of thought goes into it. I feel like regular photography is more about you, and then brand photography is like a combination about you, like your brand, and also your audience that your photography needs to appeal to or
Yeah.
attract.
Yeah, that's exactly what I say. I'm like, brand photography is a mashup of the things you like, because it's important you like your brand, of course, you're gonna build a
Hmm.
brand that you love, but it's also, combined with what your ideal client wants to see. You have to consider both sides. You can't go one way or the other, because if you go too much on the side of your ideal client, well, you might not love your brand anymore. You're just doing it for someone else. But if you go too much
Hmm.
on the side of your personal preferences, well, then you run the risk of not hitting the mark with your ideal client. So you really got to balance both.
I like that. So when clients come to you, and I'm wondering if it's like an obvious kind of question, but they know who their ideal client is, don't they?
They usually have an idea. My questionnaire will sometimes help them dig a little bit deeper, which you saw. And if I
Hmm.
get a feeling, if someone fills out my questionnaire and I get a feeling they don't really have an idea, maybe they're at the beginning stages of their business or they're pivoting, right? Then I will always follow up and kind of flush it through more with them and kind of figure it out a little bit deeper. But usually people have a good idea, yes.
Hmm. Do you have any tips for people that are trying to find their ideal client?
Yeah.
What can they look at?
Yeah, yeah. So the best way, in my opinion, I've done this for my business many times, is think about a client that you've already have that you loved working with. Like they're in the phase of life that you want. They have the lifestyle that you kind of want. They line up with your values. They were really easy to work with. Just think of that person. And if you don't have that person, my favorite hack is to find an ideal client on Instagram. And I love doing this for myself. I'll literally like look up people on Instagram, and I work with a lot of service providers and online coaches. So I'll just search for like an online coach or maybe someone in the health and wellness space that's like a fitness trainer or something. And I'll search those hashtags and I'll find someone on Instagram that who I want to work with. And then I'll kind of just stalk their content. And that way, and people are so personal on Instagram, right? So you can really figure out a lot about their family life, their lifestyle, their problems, kind of all those things. And that's a great way to kind of figure out who your ideal client might be if you don't have one that you've already worked with. And then
I love that. That's such a great tip.
yeah. Oh, it's so good. And then and pay attention to the language that they're using too. This is another great tip is especially if you're following someone on Instagram, they're going to use a lot of language to describe their problems, where they're at, their values in their words. Because I think a lot of the times when we're promoting ourselves, we get kind of like we put our marketing hat on and we use jargon that people don't understand. So finding real people on Instagram that resemble your ideal client, use the messaging that they're actually using, use the words they're using, and it's going to connect with them so much more impactfully. Yeah.
That's such an important tip. And obviously, in copywriting, there is a term we use, voice of customer, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not just paying attention to, the ideas that ideal customers share, but I'm literally paying attention to the kind of language they use, the way they talk about their problems, their challenges, their aspirations, their dreams, whatever that is, because my goal as a copywriter to then weave that language into the story, into the messaging, so it resonates with those ideal clients. So I love that you're pinpointing that. So for our listeners, for interior designers, if you don't have your ideal client figured out, you're suggesting to go on Instagram, follow and kind of stalk a person that you think that you resonate with, that you think your ideal client looks like. And then what are we looking for? Are we looking, so you already mentioned a couple of things. We're looking for the challenges that they're sharing. We're looking for the things that they want that they're sharing. We're looking for the language that they're sharing those ideas in. What else should we be kind of paying attention to as we're stalking or trying, like on the journey to figure out who that ideal client is?
Yeah. So all the things that you mentioned are fantastic. Like, I think the most important thing is what are they desiring in their lives, right? Like, what kind of lifestyle are they living? And because usually the things that people are sharing are highlights, right? Like, oh, I'm going on vacation, I'm buying this, I'm doing that. Usually they want more of that. So that's kind of a good indicator of what you could hint at. If you get someone to design your home, it frees up more time so you can go on vacation. You can spend time with your family. So you're kind of thinking about it that way instead of this is all the features of the service that I'm offering. People see a list of features and they don't connect it to how it plays into their lives. But by saying, by booking me and going through this transformation, you're going to free up more time to be with your family or do the things that you love. Another thing you could look out for is like, where do they hang out? Right. So and that's something that you really can showcase in photos as well. So looking at, are they hanging out in really indie coffee shops? Are they hanging out at wineries on the weekends with their friends? Like, what's the level of luxury that their life is at? And those are things that you can showcase in your marketing messaging and your brand photos and your overall branding.
I love that. I don't think I've ever thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're noticing that your ideal clients or the person that you aspire your client to be like, showcasing a lot of that, like the wineries and all those places, you can leverage that in your photo shoot and use that information to your advantage, because
Exactly.
this way you're kind of aligning or finding common ground with your ideal client, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And photos are such first impressions, right? Like, we really rely on photos to make good first impressions, and first impressions, we know that they matter. It's true. The cliche is true. So if someone who loves hanging out with their friends at a winery, for example, and they see a photo of you with a wine glass, it's like an instant connection and they're going to be intrigued. So that's the power of really figuring out what your ideal client is into or what they're desiring, because a lot of products and services we buy into purely because we want a different lifestyle. We think it's going to give us something that we want, whether that's freedom, luxury, connection, community, right? So thinking about those things.
I like that. Any other pointers in terms of finding your ideal client?
So going back to the example that I gave before, as if you have someone in mind, actually getting on a call with them, like actually meeting with them and just picking their brain, right? And really diving deep into what are you struggling with when it comes to interior design, or what are you struggling with when it comes to marketing, whatever your service is, just asking them that. And then that way you're getting their words, and then they might be struggling with things you're not even aware of. And that's how you really, really get into people's heads, because you want to express what people are already thinking. You want to be joining the conversation that they're already having in their head. And what's a better way to do that than actually sitting down and talking with someone? And with finding your ideal client on Instagram too, you can always ask to chat with them too. Be like, hey, I love what you're doing. I would love to, jump on a call with you. And just a lot of people are really receptive to that, because I find especially a lot of small business owners, they love being there for each other, right? So it can become really helpful to do that.
I like that. I feel like I should do more of that. It feels a little bit scary to reach out to someone, but actually what you don't realize, and I only realized that after I started like a few years ago, interviewing my clients. So the interior design clients, people love talking about themselves.
Yeah.
People love talking about their problems, what they want. And I feel like it feels scary, but people are a lot more approachable than they seem, or than it seems to you.
And if you come at it from an approach of, I want to help you, people are going to talk to you. Like, so example, what I will do with my brand photography clients is, if I want to have a conversation with them, I'll be like, hey, I'm just wondering, how your photos are working out for you. Is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything that you're struggling with when it comes to posting on social media or updating your website? And they'll tell me, because they want the help. And usually it's something that I can help them with. And then in turn, I'm understanding what some of their needs are when it comes to brand photography. So that can apply to any industry. So interior designers asking their clients, hey, I sent you a floor plan or, that design plan for your room. Like, or how are you finding applying that? Like, do you have any issues that you want me to help you work through? Or I don't know the exact lingo, obviously,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like, kind of thinking about it, how that applies to your business. And people always love personalized help and customized advice. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So going at it from the angle of providing value and sharing, and then through that process, gaining more insights about your ideal clients.
Mhm.
That's great. I love that. So let's say interior designers that are maybe currently thinking or considering a rebrand, let's say they figured it out or they have a plan to figure out who their ideal client is, or maybe they already have their ideal client in mind. How do you plan a branding photo shoot? What goes into that process if you are on that journey to rebrand your business? Where do you start and what do you do? How do you need to prepare for that?
Yeah. So we touched on it a little bit earlier, and brand photography is very different from other types of photography in a sense that you do have to plan things because you want it to work for you. So picking spaces and props and outfits that are based on your preferences is not going to be enough. So that's when the ideal client research comes into play. And then once you figure that out, these are things that can be shown in photos. Like if you're figuring out where your ideal client hangs out, what kind of lifestyle they are desiring, are they family oriented? Do they like to be in nature? Thinking about the things that you can show visually in photos, those are going to be what you take with you to plan the photo shoot. Because not everything we can show in photos, obviously. We can't show what someone's thinking necessarily, but we can kind of hit on these other little pieces. And then with our copy, that's when we really drive it home. Like that's when we tap into what's going on in their minds. So based on like the overall feeling and the kind of vibes that you've identified for your client, you want to create a mood board. And you could do this using Pinterest or Canva. Both are free apps to kind of do that. And then this is going to really convey the mood. So you're not thinking about exactly the shots that you want to get. You're just thinking about, like I said, like the locations, the colors, kind of the overall vibe that's going to appeal to your target client, and putting that into a mood board, just so visually you know what direction to go in. Because I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and they start picking locations, they start planning the shots, they start picking the outfits when they don't really know like the overall vibe. And that's when it gets really chaotic. So it's good to start with this kind of, what are we trying to achieve in terms of mood, right? Like figure that out first. It's a good starting point to kind of jump off. And then once you have your mood board, then you're going to source locations to match. And then obviously these are going to resonate with your ideal client. So Google Maps is a great way to look at photos that other people have posted. I literally do this all the time for my clients too, as just go on Google Maps and like look around and see. So if you decide that a coffee shop is where you want to do your brand shoot and that's what resonates with your ideal client, you're going to search coffee shops in your area. And then you're just going to look through Google reviews because people post photos all the time.
And they post regular photos, like realistic looking photos, unedited, so you can really get a feel for that place. Huh?
Exactly. Yeah. And same with parks, right? Like parks or public spaces, like use Google Maps to your advantage. I'll even look at like Google Maps Street View and just kind of walk around because that's where you can find some really cool unconventional spaces, whether it be like an alleyway or a path in a park or something kind of unconventional, because you really want to customize it too. Like a studio is not always going to fit with someone's brand. And it's also important to try to hit a variety of locations, because another benefit of brand photography is really getting that variety that you can post over social media, and not look like everything was done on the same day, right? So looking for a variety in your locations is good too. And then you're going to think about the photos that you actually need, because a lot of people just show up to a shoot and they think, oh, okay, it's inevitable that I'm going to get all the photos that I need, but you have to plan for it, especially when different social media platforms and websites have different formatting. So for example, like a website banner, like the first image that you're going to put on your website is extremely wide. So and you don't want, sometimes you put text over it, right? So you don't want it to be too busy. You want to kind of do it on a neutral background that isn't too chaotic. So you need to plan for that. And you also need to shoot landscape. So your photographer needs to know, okay, I'm shooting this wide because it's going to be a cover photo or it's going to be a website banner. And then also if you're doing any freebies or any types of launches or you need a podcast cover, these are things that you all got to think about because again, if you just show up and shoot, you might not get the result that you want. So I would list out those things too.
That's such an important thing to mention. And that's exactly what I did prior to booking you for my photo shoot. I actually spoke with my website designer, and she's the one who told me, okay, get a couple of shots beside a blank wall, which is exactly what we did. I had like my little mood board on my phone and we kept referencing it like, okay, these are the shots, I do need a few shots for social media. I do need a few shots for my website. Some of them need to be on a kind of blank, clear, light background because definitely there's going to be copy laid over it, or maybe she's going to like cut me out because the way the way my new website will work is that she would need to cut me out and have that space around me blank. So talk to your web designer before that and figure out, how do you want to use your photos afterwards so that you're happy? Because at the end of the day, when you're getting your photos and you realize that, oh, shoot, like I can't actually use them for my intended purposes, that kind of, that sucks.
Exactly. And you're like, okay, I guess I need to book another shoot.
Right. It's like these are beautiful photos, but if I can't use them, what's the point?
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of pre-planning goes into it. And I want to repeat what you said in the beginning. I feel like it's such an important point when you said figure out mood and vibe of the photo shoot before you start. Because I think it's so tempting to just go look. That's what I did. I went literally on a bunch of studio websites. I'm like, ooh, this studio is cool. This studio is cool. And all of them looked cool, but you have to figure out what's the mood that you're going for, and that's where, you got to know who your audience is, what's that vibe that you want your photography to kind of evoke, and all those things before you actually look like scout location.
Yeah, exactly. Because it becomes really overwhelming because all of a sudden you're like, okay, I have 10 studios that I love. How do I choose? But if you already have like a mood and a vibe in mind, it narrows it down. It makes it much more streamlined, but then also we're making sure that because the mood board is the first step, it's going to appeal to your target client because you're creating that mood board with them in mind. You're coming fresh off that exercise of who's my ideal client, what are they desiring, where do they hang out, what do they want to be feeling. So you're creating the mood board based on that. So you know that you're kind of covered with any decision you make going forward. And then you just refer it back to the mood board. Okay, does this outfit match the mood? Does this location match the mood? Do these props make sense, right? And another thing I like to do is have a few brand words, put those in the mood board. And these are the feelings that you want your brand to portray. This is super important.
That's cool. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I was just about to do that because I'm like,
oh, cool.
Big. So example, a good one is luxury. Like if you put luxury, if you decide luxury is one of my brand words because my ideal client really loves a luxurious lifestyle. That's what they're looking for in their service providers, their interior decorators or whatever. So you put luxury in your mood board and then maybe you put, luxury, you put approachable, and you put empowered or something. Like those are your words. Then you can decide too going forward, if I'm going to bring this prop in, well, is this prop luxury, right? Like, am I going to bring in something from Walmart or Dollar, something that looks not luxury? Am I going to bring that in? Does that make sense? Or
does that align?
Yeah. Or am I going to choose a higher end item? And then, so kind of all of your decisions, you can refer back to the mood board. And it takes away a lot of that like analysis paralysis that you get when making decisions. You're like, oh, is this the right choice? Well, just look back at your mood board and you'll be able to tell very quickly, is this the right decision for my brand shoot?
I like that. So we've got the mood, the vibe, we've got the mood board, we've got our brand words. What else do we need to consider before while we're planning a branding photo shoot?
Mm-hmm. And then I think looking at all the specifics, which we kind of just touched on, so the outfits and the props, just making sure you have a plan for those too. Because again, if you go to the shoot and you don't have outfits planned with certain locations, it's not going to look as cohesive as you want it to. So figuring out, okay, I'm going to the coffee shop first and then I'm going to the park after. Well, what outfit's going to make sense with the coffee shop? What outfit's going to make sense with the park? Are we bringing in your brand colors into the outfits? Because that's always a great idea too. So just having everything planned so you're staying on track, but then you're hitting that variety, as I mentioned before, because you want to be able to use these photos for a long time on social media back to back without them looking too repetitive. So planning out a shot list and having, the time that you're going to be at a location, what outfit are you wearing in that location, what props are you bringing in to that shot, and then what type of purpose is this shot going to fulfill? Like, is this going to be the cover photo for Facebook? Is this going to be the podcast cover? You can mark those too, so you know exactly, okay, this is the shot that we need for the podcast, right? Let's make it good.
I like that. Okay, so it's a very thoughtful process, and I feel like the other things that one needs to think about is those filler shots. And I'm not sure, I'm probably not using the right terminology for that, but it's those filler shots, like the background or maybe the reel or whatever that is, those shots with the books and the microphone, if you're in a podcast and like a service or something else. Can you talk about that? Like why do we need to think about those things and how do we use them?
Yeah. That's a good point. That's another shot that you kind of want to plan for. I call them detail shots. Other people will.
That's a much better.
Yeah.
That's a much better explanation.
No, it's funny. I get so many names for them. Like people will be like the B-roll shots, the close-up shots, the lifestyle shots. Like they've been called everything under the sun. So, but it's funny when people are describing them, I know exactly what they're talking about. I'm like,
but it's so important because I feel like those are the shots that we usually go, or I don't know, maybe I'll speak for myself, but I usually go on like Unsplash or those free photography sites to get those shots for your social media. But imagine if you have those on brand and it's your hands in the shot and it's your like face or your outfit or whatever that is in that detail shot. And it's so on brand for you. It's so much more impactful than if it was just a regular stock photography shot.
100%. Yeah. And it saves you time, right? Having to look for all those things. And like, that's the beauty of brand photography too, is you have a large archive of photos that are just going to work no matter what, that are going to look good side by side. So if you're building a freebie for your audience or a pricing guide or whatever, it's like you're going to put all those photos in there and they're just going to work no matter what, instead of sourcing all these different photos. But the detail shots are super important. And yeah, essentially what they are is it's just like up close photos of props that you bring, of textures, of locations, of your hands doing something that you can use a lot of the times in the background of something. So they make for great website banners because you can put text over them because it's not your face, right? You're not putting text over your face. Or you can use them as a freebie cover photo. You can blow it up and put it there. They're so versatile in how they can be used. And it's nice to break it up. If it's just photos of your face back to back to back, the feed, the website starts to look a little bit, one-sided. You want to balance it out with some other photos too. And detail shots are really great for speaking to the interests of your ideal client. Because if you say, like we talked about before, if they love wine and you have a photo of a wine glass, it's that instant connection again. They're like, oh, wow, I like that. Or if it's luxury props, stuff that they would buy for themselves, they're like, okay, this girl gets me.
I like that. I like that. So that's great. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, but that's like a non-negotiable when it comes to planning a photo shoot, like a branding photo shoot for your business?
I think we touched on everything, but just to really like hone in on the point that we've made a few times is knowing your ideal client is absolutely the best place to start. Because with brand photography, if you're speaking to your ideal client, now you have a chance that if you show up in the explore page or wherever else on social media, you have a chance to capture their attention right away versus it just being a good photo. Like if you like that photo, it doesn't mean it's going to get you the results that you want. You really have to look at it through the lens of what is my ideal client going to connect with.
Love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for summarizing. That's excellent. So, Avalon, something that I ask every guest on my podcast, and lately without giving them much of a heads up, but so I apologize for
Yeah.
that. But is there one thing that you implemented in your life or your business? It could be like a habit or a new practice that has been game changing for you.
Oh my goodness, this is such a good question. Wow. Okay, this is kind of perfect because I sent out a newsletter this morning talking about this. And the number one thing that has been a game changer for me is connecting with people one on one, honestly. And
Ooh.
I spoke to that before with my point about literally just go out for coffee with your ideal client, talk to people, pick up the phone, text them, hey, can we chat? Because the insights that you're going to get from real people is so much better than anything that any Instagram guru is telling you. Like, and that's not to say people don't know what they're doing. There's fantastic coaches out there, but there's so much value in just talking with people and actually getting to know what their struggles are and what they need from you. And then to kind of piggyback off that, I find that networking has been like a huge thing for me.
Oh, and you do it so good. Like I've been watching you on Instagram. You're always attending these events and
Yeah.
get-togethers. And I don't know if you're attending them as a photographer or maybe both photographer and a guest, but you're so good at that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's so much fun. And you get so much out of it that honestly you wouldn't even think of firsthand. For me, it's really about just being in a room with other small business owners and working through roadblocks in your business in real time. And it's probably similar with masterminds too. Like I've never been in a mastermind, but there's so much value of just talking things through with people. So I think the more you could just get in the room, get one-on-one with people, it's going to help you 100%. Yeah.
I love that. And I think connecting one-on-one with a client or whoever that is that you want to know more about, I think that has been actually one of my favorite tips so far because you're getting information and insights from them directly, not from research, not from experts, not from whatever somebody said, but you're actually in a room with them or over coffee and they're telling you
100.
what they feel deep down or what are they struggling with or what they want in life. So
Yeah.
crucial.
And then it actually validates what you're thinking. For example, like you could think, oh, my client is really struggling with social media, or my client is really struggling with finding their personal style. Let's use a design reference, right? Finding their personal style. And then you ask them, like, is this what you're struggling with? And they're actually like, well, yeah, but my main struggle is actually this. Like it might turn into something that you didn't even realize, or maybe you're just using the wrong words to describe it. For example, like I was always using the word leads. Like I was saying, oh, my clients want more leads. They want more leads. And they did want more leads, but that's not how they described it themselves. What they said is like, oh, I want to work with more people who align with my values. And I was like, whoa, I've never used that phrase before. And now here are my ideal clients saying that that's what they actually want. Well, I'm going to use that.
100%. That's what you need to do. You need to reflect that in your messaging. I feel the same way because I had a similar thing when it comes to using the term copywriting. Not everybody knew what copywriting is. And a lot of people use things like content, copy, messaging. And I felt that messaging is something that resonated more. And here I was, my entire career since I started this business, kept using copywriting as my main term. And And then I meet people and then they're like, well, what exactly is copywriting? I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. Now we need to, I need to consider that when I speak to my ideal audience, because if it's not going to resonate, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. And what you hit on is so perfect too. Such an important point is that you have to keep on refining. Like just because you think, oh, you started with copywriting and then maybe over time you decided, okay, messaging is more relevant. Oh, now it's content. Like you're never going to get something and it's going to last forever, right?
Or resonate with everybody.
Yeah.
It's going to resonate with some people.
Exactly. And it's constantly refining that and just seeing what works. So you gotta pay attention to what people are responding to. And like social media is so great for that, because if you're resonating with people, they will comment, they will engage, they will message you to learn more, right? So that's when you know you really hit that sweet spot.
Yeah. Pay attention to what people say in the comments or they message you with. Pay attention to the language that they're using or the things that they choose to ask about, because that's probably what they genuinely want to know deep down or something that's unclear to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. Avalon, thank you so much. You've shared so much great stuff. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you or work with you or hire you as a brand photographer?
Yeah, I would love that.
And mention where you're located, please, because this podcast is like everywhere.
Oh, yes, true. That is important. Yes. So I am based out of Toronto. So I service Toronto and all surrounding areas. So that includes a lot. It includes Orangeville, which I live here myself, Brampton, Mississauga. I've gone to Collingwood, Cambridge, all over the place. So I am open to travel. Important to mention. And then you can find me at avalonmohns.com, and my Instagram handle is Avalon Mohns Photo.
Amazing. I'll put that in the show notes. And again, Avalon, thank you so much for being an amazing guest on this episode.
Thank you for having me. It was super fun to talk about this. I love this stuff, so it was super fun.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Marketing for Designers. This is Masha Cohen signing off. See you next week.